Hello, I am Ashish Jain, a group product manager in the Security Service Edge team, and I focus on Microsoft Entra Private Access. With me, I have Abdi.
Hello, I'm Abdi Saidabadi, Senior Product Marketing Manager on the same team.
Today, we will give you all the details of our private access offering now in public preview and show you a few demos so that you can see it in action. But first, let's give you a quick overview of customer challenges with traditional network security approaches, the need for a new approach, and an overview of our identity-centric solution. Traditional network security approaches just don't scale to modern demands of flexible work arrangements and accelerating digital transformation. Increased reliance on hybrid work is changing the way we secure our network perimeter and connect users to internal and external resources. Think about the last time you tried to connect to your critical applications over traditional VPNs. It's not a seamless or fast experience. Moreover, attackers can use it to move laterally in your network, threatening your most critical assets. Even if you've modernized access, you still need to integrate and manage multiple identity and network security solutions. Neither identity nor network security controls alone can protect all assets. Disconnected tools may leave critical integration points unprotected. Skilled attackers often exploit these seams between solutions. The new networking model we introduced earlier this month will transform the way you secure access. With Microsoft's Security Service Edge solution and the addition of Internet Access and Private Access to the Microsoft Entra product family, you don't need to spend time deciding which tool would work better for each app or how to bridge the policies that your identity team created with the policies that your networking team created. You can now configure unified identity and network controls with conditional access in Microsoft Entra and then connect any end user to any application or external resource and internal IT systems through a cloud-delivered identity-centric network access solution. Today, we will show you how private access can help you secure access to all private apps and resources for users anywhere with an identity-centric zero-trust network access solution. But first, let's touch on a few unique elements of Microsoft's SSE solution. The solution is built on zero-trust principles. It verifies every user and enforces least privilege, giving users access only to those applications and resources that they truly need to do their job. Private access offers the much needed granularity and flexibility that enterprises need to secure the private apps, resources, and users. You can enrich your network security policies with context about users, devices, and their locations that comes directly from conditional access. You can apply policies that enable secure segmented granular access to all your private applications in your corporate network on-premises or in the cloud. With private access, your private applications are not only more secure, but your employees can also access them faster compared to traditional approaches, thanks to Microsoft's global network, which has unmatched scale and distribution close to most of the connected world user population. Now let's look closer at private access. Legacy VPN-based network security approaches simply cannot scale to modern demands. VPNs, or traditional network security methods, grant excessive access to the entire corporate network by making the remote user's device part of the corporate network. So, all it takes is one compromised user account, one infected device, or one open port for an attacker to get in and laterally move anywhere inside your network and gain access to your most critical assets. Now with private access, you can move to identity-centric ZTNA and modernize access to private applications. Private access enables secure access to any app, including on-premises private applications using any port and any protocol, including RDP, SSH, SMB, FTP, corporate printers, and all others based on TCP or UDP protocols. It gives you unique security controls by placing the identity at the center of the access. You can simply use conditional access policies to control access to all your private apps. For example, you can easily add multi-factor authentication or MFA and device compliance to your private RDP or SMB applications. Our deep integration with Microsoft Entra ID and continuous access evaluation capability will enable you to terminate ongoing sessions if anomalies or changes in user or device security posture are detected. For example, if a user connects from one part of the world and then immediately connects from another part of the world, what we call as impossible travel, we identify this as an anomaly and enforce a reauth or step-up auth. In addition, you can enable single sign-on to your private applications using SAML or HTTP headers or even legacy Kerberos authentication for both web as well as non-web applications. With private access, you can enable segmented access to private applications instead of granting access to the entire network, as traditional VPNs do. You can define granular access policies for each application or to a group of apps. In addition to segmenting access based on user and device identity, we will enable you to segment access using even process identity. Application discovery is a key capability we are building into private access. It enables you to discover your on-premises applications and onboard them to Microsoft Entra ID so you can define granular access policies for them. In a post-pandemic world, employees need a consistent security posture whether they are accessing private apps remotely or on-premises. The goal of intelligent local access is to enable seamless zero-trust network access for both local as well as remote users. Now let's take a look at how it all works. There are three components. Client or the leftmost side, this is the endpoint trying to access the private app in your network. Microsoft Global Network in the middle. This is where our proxy and security stack are running as a managed cloud service. Your private network on the right side. This is your private network physically on premises or virtualized, connecting to Azure Public Cloud or other third-party clouds. Private access is a true multi-cloud solution and will meet you wherever your apps are. On the left side, an agent on the endpoint enables access. This agent will ship with Windows, making it very seamless not only for end users but also for device admins who won't need to deploy or manage yet another agent on the endpoint. Other platforms don't require another agent as long as they are running the Microsoft Defender app. It is built in. The agent is responsible for acquiring the traffic and tunneling it to the service in the cloud based on the policies you define in the Microsoft Entra admin portal. It authenticates the user and device identity for each acquired network flow as defined in your access policies. Since our tunnel is a gRPC HTTP2 based tunnel, we can seamlessly snap granular access policies to each network flow going through the tunnel. Our cloud service validates the user and device identity before accepting traffic from the endpoint. The traffic is then taken through an extensive set of cloud-delivered security capabilities like threat protection using intrusion detection and intrusion prevention, TLS termination for break and inspect, URL-based filtering, and web application firewalling, and several others that we continue to build in our modern stack in the cloud. If you configured SSO in your access policies, then the service and the on-premises agent work together to enable single sign-on to your private apps. Speaking of the on-premises agent, this is the same familiar connector that application proxy uses, only improved to support both web and non-web application traffic. It creates an outbound connection to our service in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about opening specific ports on your corporate firewall. These connectors broker the traffic to specific on-premises apps that you've configured. As I mentioned before, these apps can use protocols such as RDP, SSH, or any other TCP, UDP-based application defined using IP addresses or FQDNs or ports and protocols. Deploying this private access connector to your private networks on any cloud like Azure or others enables consistent zero-trust network access to all your private applications anywhere. Now let's take a look at some private access use cases. Quick access gets you started by migrating your existing deployment from VPN to private access. This enables you coarse-grained initial access that you can continue to refine. As you use app discovery to identify and onboard private applications to Microsoft Entra ID, you can segment access based on devices, users, and even processes. Segmenting makes it possible to define secure access and single sign-on policies using conditional access and snap them to individual private apps or groups of applications. Quick access makes it very easy to get started with a minimum configuration for private access, especially if you are coming from a legacy VPN world. Once you deploy a connector agent on premises, all you need to do is specify the IP address range or FQDN and ports. That's it. You can then assign users and specific conditional access policies, which quick access applies to all app segments you configured. You can also create specific private apps for segmented per app access. The Enterprise Applications section in the Microsoft Entra portal lets you define specific applications in a consistent way that's not only familiar but also richer, as you can now include app segments like IP addresses, FQDNs, ports, and protocols. You can then apply granular access policies to each of these applications or to a group of apps. You can turn on application discovery with quick access. We combine signals from endpoints from our proxy on the network, from the connector agent on premises, and optionally even from on-premises domain controllers, and recommend a set of private applications that you can review and then onboard. Once onboarded, you can snap these applications to granular access policies using Microsoft Entra conditional access. Discovery is not just a one-time act. It continues in the background and keeps identifying access patterns to recommend new applications to onboard or onboarded applications to modify, reducing the hassle of managing these apps and always keeping them updated. Now over to Abdi to talk about some of the new capabilities coming to private access soon.
Thanks, Ashish. As you said earlier, in a post-pandemic world with flexible work arrangements, you need to maintain a consistent security posture and enable a seamless user experience, whether your employees are connecting from home or their corporate office. In this scenario, traffic to on-premises apps will end up hairpinning from managed services in the cloud back to the on-premises as shown in yellow. It works, but is less than optimal. With intelligent local access, our agent acts like a smart SD-WAN device. It automatically coordinates with the connector on-premises and or services in the cloud to conclude that the application is on-premises. If you have enabled local access, then the initial signaling of the traffic, such as authenticating the user, the device, and authorization, still happens with Microsoft Entra ID in the cloud. But the actual traffic does a local breakout directly to your private app, as shown in blue, making your access to the app faster. Even when the traffic does a local breakout, the policies in the cloud still govern the network flow and can revoke access using continuous access evaluation, or CAE, when anomalous events are detected. Down the road, local access will be an even more seamless secure access solution. We will evolve our connector agent to become an on-premises appliance. In other words, an on-premises service edge that will also bring traffic inspection capabilities to local access. To mitigate the threat of lateral movement significantly, we will bring you a very granular segmentation capability. In your application definitions, you will not only be able to include app segments like IP addresses and fully qualified domains or FQDNs or port or protocols, but also process segments as well. So you will be able to provide access to specific processes on endpoint devices while validating not just the user and device, but also the process identity. In this example, only the specific process headtracks.exe with a specific code signing signature is allowed to communicate your private application on premises. Now back to Ashish.
Thank you, Abdi. Now let's take a look at private access in action. As I mentioned earlier, private access enables access to all private apps. In this demo, we will use Secure Shell to connect to a Linux server. Before I get access, conditional access policies ensure that the device security posture is verified and that the user identity is also verified with multi-factor authentication. As I try to access the server using SSH, I am prompted for MFA. I use my phone to complete the multi-factor authentication, and after completing MFA, I'm signed in to my Linux server using SSH. Let's take a look at two more examples, RDP and SMB file shares. You will see that even without direct network level connectivity, we will still access private apps after authenticating successfully. First, let's connect to the RDP server. Let's confirm there is no VPN connected. Let's try to see whether we have network level access to the private app. As expected, I cannot reach the server using ping as I do not have network level access. Now, let's bring up the remote desktop native client and try to RDP into the private app. The moment I connect, the agent acquires the traffic and forces conditional access auth using MFA, which validates both the device identity and the user identity, getting the access token from Microsoft Entra ID and validating it with the service. Since everything checked out fine, Microsoft Entra ID enables the connection to the right IDP server, as you can see. Now let's try to access a SMB file share. As I try to access the private SMB file share, I'm again forced to go through conditional access authentication, in this case MFA. Once I complete the auth, I can get to the SMB file share securely without any direct network level access. Now over to Abdi to show you the Microsoft Entra admin experience.
Thanks, Ashish. Now let's take a look at how easy it is for admins to set up private access. After deploying an on-premises agent or connector, all I need to do is to define IP address ranges or FQDNs that I wish to enable access for. As I configure quick access, it creates an enterprise app in Microsoft Entra ID, which the admin can use to manage user assignment and conditional access policies for quick access. In this demo, we also tag the quick access application with a specific tag that we have created for high business impact applications. You can create a specific individual private application in a similar way. In this demo, we create a MyRDP app and assign it an IP address-based app segment. I only need to provide name of the private app, select the connector I wish to use with the app, and then specify the IP address and port. With conditional access, I can easily create policies and snap them to not just individual apps, but also to a group of private applications tagged with a specific attribute. In this demo, we create a new conditional access policy and target it to all private apps with attribute high business impact. You can define categories of applications like high, medium, and low and snap specific conditional access policies to them. For example, low business impact applications require MFA, medium ones require strong auth, and high impact ones require FIDO-based auth. Now back to Ashish.
Thank you, Abdi. To learn more, please visit the Private Access product page. You can also try the Private Access preview by going to the provided link here. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward for you to trying out Private Access and sharing your precious feedback with us.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and a good evening to you. Hope you enjoyed our deep dive session with the demos. Thank you for joining us today at the Ask Microsoft Anything for Microsoft Entra Internet Access and Microsoft Entra Private Access. It's so good to have you here. My name is Mamta Kumar. I'm a product manager on the Identity and Network Access product team here at Microsoft. Kicking off our introductions with me today, alongside our team of subject matter experts ready to answer your questions in chat, we have our speakers, Anupma Sharma, Ashish Jain, and Yair Tor. Let's get started with introductions. Anupma?
Hi, morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anupama. I'm the group product manager. I focus on the Entra Internet Access piece of it. Over to Ashish.
Hey everyone, really excited to be here. My name is Ashish Jain. I am also a principal group product manager on the same team, specifically focusing on Microsoft Entra Private Access. Over to Yair.
Hey everyone. Excited to be here as well. My name is Yair Tor. I'm a partner product manager in the Identity and Network Access division working on this awesome new SSC service. And don't worry how to pronounce my name. When I go to Starbucks, I'm John.
Thank you, Yair, Ashish, and Anupma. Now, we have a few questions that have come in. So, we have our first question from Samuel. Is private access effectively replacing Azure AD application proxy?
That's a great question, Samuel. Azure AD Application Proxy has been a product which has existed for several years. It's already generally available. We have millions of users using this product right now, and it works well for the scenarios it supports. Now, we've taken Azure AD Application Proxy and taken the goodness of it to build a completely new product, which is Microsoft Entra Private Access. While it builds on the goodness of application proxy, it does not mean that all the investments that our users and customers have done on Azure AD application proxy goes for a waste. All your applications that you've created in Azure AD for application proxy, as well as all the connectors and deployments that you've built so far, they all will be used as is with Entra Private Access. But it's a completely new product that we've built on the goodness of application proxy and adding even more capabilities to enable access to not just web applications, but also non-web applications.
Thank you, Ashish. Our next question is, what integration will this and Entra Internet Access have with Sentinel and Defender?
Yeah, I can take this one. So we will eventually have full integration with Sentinel, with a connector, and with a Defender for endpoint. At this point, I think the integrations that we have in the initial public preview is very minimal, but it is on our roadmap. Our agent on across OS clients will be integrated with Defender, as Ashish mentioned. So yeah, anyone wants to add something?
Yeah, indeed. As Yair mentioned, there are deep integrations with all the relevant security products in the Microsoft suite. And Defender obviously is a host of different capabilities. I had already mentioned Defender for endpoints and how we're working closely with them. Defender for cloud apps, we are looking at integrations with our CASB engine and how to simulate inline CASB capabilities also. Yeah, keep looking for post-paid integrations here.
Thank you, Yair and Anupma. Now we have a question from Elvind. Will you deliver the app via your newest ways of deploying apps, store, Winjet, and with automatic update support?
I can take that one. So I believe when you say app, you're referring to our global secure access client. Now, the answer to this question depends on what platform you're talking about. If you're talking about Windows, over time, this application or this client will become part of the operating system itself. For down-level operating system versions, you would be able to use any of your existing enterprise config management solutions like SCCM, your MDM solutions. You will be able to use them to deploy these applications. For other platforms, specifically for mobile, our client will be part of the Defender application. And you will again be able to use the same configuration management and deployment solutions that you're familiar with or perhaps already use to deploy these applications. And of course, our mobile applications will exist on corresponding respective platform stores as well, like the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store.
Thank you, Ashish. Our next question is from Kaivan. Can private access be used for OT, IoT, ICS, networks, and devices?
That's a great question. The answer to this question really depends on how you've deployed these devices. Now, if you're actually accessing these devices from a remote location, all you need to do is map these endpoints into an application in Azure AD. And once you do that, you will be able to access them in the same secure way and put them behind conditional access. All it needs is a line of sight from the connector, and you will be able to access these devices from any endpoint device that has the global secure access client installed.
All right. Thank you, Ashish. While we are waiting for a few more questions to come in, anything else you'd like to share, Ashish, on this?
We are exploring certain additional capabilities as well, specifically for IoT or OT industrial devices. Some of those would enable access not only to remotely controlling or accessing these devices, but also bring security to these devices when they access internet endpoints. So internet access from these devices and private access to these devices is where we will add security to.
Got it. Thank you, Ashish. Our next question is from Troy. Is the private access solution going to be FIPS 140-2 compliant?
Um, we at Microsoft we have an extensive set of regulatory and compliance specifications that we ensure that our products adhere to and align as well. We will have an exact list published, and most likely the FIPS compliance will be part of our product offering as well.
Yeah, and I would like just to say that what is really unique is that even though it's really initial public preview, and typically we go through certification only for J services, this service is already in the pipeline and going through like the beginning of extensive certification. So you could expect that anything that is standard for Microsoft to offer, this product will offer to.
Excellent. Thank you, Yair. Now we have a question from Twitter. What is unique about the Microsoft 365 integration with Microsoft Entra Internet Access versus other SASE providers?
Sure, I can take that. There are many differentiators or unique capabilities that we bring to M365 Suite. Also, hopefully, you would have noted that we feel so strongly about these capabilities. We are offering these as integrated value with the existing E3, E5 licenses. The key from a security value prop perspective is we are not only protecting the authentication plane for M365, we are truly bringing the zero trust ecosystem to M365 data plane. So you take compliant network check as an example. It is enforced to instantly revoke any untoward access in the data path. So as an admin, you don't have to wait for tokens to be refreshed, but any revocation with your network security access adherence changing would be enforced directly in the data path. Similarly, with tenant restriction, which is a very important data exfiltration control, we not only enforce it during token issuance, we enforce it in the data path, protecting your critical assets like SharePoint, Exchange, Teams, etc., from anonymous access, from token filtration attacks, and so on. So that's the key value prop on security. On visibility, again, we bring deep activity logging with many metadata enrichment fields, which are directly integrated into the log schema, enabling better and faster threat correlation, which is a very unique offering that we bring to M365. And the notable thing about it, we do not break and inspect your traffic to generate these deep insights. And that is the ethos also, and a good segue on the third key value prop. M365 Suite is one of the most widely used productivity apps in modern enterprises today. And all of the security and visibility capabilities that Microsoft SSE brings to M365 are co-located on the same front doors that M365 services run on. And therefore, from a performance and resiliency perspective, this will truly be the best-in-class offering that you will experience.
Yeah. I would love to add a little bit more. Anupma kind of provided great in-depth, but the summary title for that is that we really want to provide the best security, visibility to Office 365 and user experience. Typically, it comes like either you have user experience or you have security and visibility, and now you don't need to choose anymore. And the easiest way to think about it is that Microsoft has published the recommended network connectivity principles about 7 years ago, how you should access M365. And customers are really struggling how to do that. So this is actually automating like what we have been recommending all along, while not giving up on the visibility and the security that you would have expected in order to achieve.
Thank you, Yair and Anupma. Next, we have a question from Mark. Is it safe to use these solutions in production while in preview?
Yeah, I can pick that one up. So generally speaking, we do not recommend using in production preview releases. We know that customers, some of them are doing that, and the product are not harmful per se, but and we do provide support. We do have people supporting these products, but the recommendation is to use it for testing, not for production.
Just to add to that, just want to highlight that as part of our preview, we specifically do not offer any specific SLA for the product, which is why, like Yair said, we do not recommend deploying it in production.
But it doesn't mean that you don't get support if you call support. It just means that you don't get support the same way that nobody will wake up 2 a.m. in order to solve a problem. That's what it means.
Yeah, I do want to index on the term safe, just to, if the question wanted to drill into security and privacy aspects, we would want to ensure that Microsoft products go through security and privacy reviews and clearance before they are released in public preview. From that aspect you covered, as well as from the point of view of service availability, our client as well as branch connectivity models will not block user productivity for whatever reason, service is down or there are issues. These are set up to continue to have your users get access to the workloads, both private and internet. So do please make note of that as well.
Thank you, Anupma. Along the same line, we have a question from Derek. If we are trying the public preview items and have issues, for example, we couldn't get the agent to connect properly, where should we go to report issues and find troubleshooting or support suggestions?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Go ahead, Ashish. Start.
That's a great question. I think part of this question Yair covered in his previous answer. So while our product is still in preview, it's still supported, which means you could still dial Microsoft support and register or log your issues, and we'll try our best to help you resolve those issues. You could use the same Microsoft support channels that you've been using for existing products that already are generally available, and our support teams are fully ramped up to take up those concerns, issues that you run into, and will help you to resolve them.
Thank you, Ashish. Our next question is, if we have public internet-facing web apps that only corporate Entra ID users access, and we want to MFA users that access the sites, is Entra Private Access the best tool, or should we look at Entra Internet Access? These are public internet-facing web apps.
I'm just trying to pass the question. Yeah, go ahead, Ashish.
That's a great question, and it's a very common use case. It really depends, how you've built your app, and how you're using it, how you've deployed it, and is your app already integrated with modern authentication in some ways or not. For example, if you've built your app on Azure, as an example, and I'm just taking one example. If you've built your app on Azure and somehow you're able to inject it into your virtual networks using private link or private endpoints, then of course you will be able to put MFA in front of it using Entra Private Access. That's fully supported and it should work for you. And if it doesn't, we'd really like to hear your feedback and understand more. But from the product perspective, that scenario should work. Now, if your applications are completely in the whole internet ecosystem wherein there is no limited scope to it, then the thing to realize is that at the end of the day, the application has unfettered access on the internet. So even if you put MFA in front of that using your managed devices, which will still be the case, you will be able to put MFA when your users access these internet applications through managed devices. And for that, you can use Microsoft Entra Internet Access. But again, just be mindful of the fact that those applications can still be accessed by users from devices which are not managed.
So I agree with Ashish and just wanted the general guidelines. If this is an application which has public IP address, typically it would be with internet access. If it is private access, it's typically with your private IP address range. Typically, you don't own the public IP addresses that for this application, but if you happen to own them, that's fine too. Doesn't change like the architecture, I think. Like this is what Ashish is saying. And anything that is a public IP address, if you really want to enforce that nobody can access it, you need to integrate that application with Azure AD so that basically the application itself can run conditional access and basically limit access to it only through our service if you want no access other than that.
There is a very interesting nuance here that we've built into the product, which is compliant network. Maybe Anupama, you want to briefly touch upon that.
Yeah, indeed. You may have noted during the accelerator session earlier that we are adding a very unique integration with location controls in compliant network. So any public-facing application, you can apply this check using the regular cloud app constructs in CA, and that would force the users to only gain access if and only if they are coming from the network construct. Obviously, flexibility is possible here. If they're not coming through compliant network, you can call for MFA and so on, all of the various controls that CA provides. And as Ashish referred, this is a really cool way to protect your public-facing private applications and make sure that they're coming only through the Entra solution.
Thank you, Anupma. Ideally, we want everything protected behind the compliant network check. Our next question is from Manoj. Can private access override a firewall policy?
It depends how you look at it and where the firewall policy is applied. The goal of the product is not to override any existing firewall rules or policies that you've deployed. The advantage with Entra Private Access is that you do not need to change your corporate firewall, meaning that you do not need to open anything internet inbound into your corporate network. This works by way of deploying this connector agent that creates an outbound connection to our service in the cloud, enabling you to relay the traffic to your private applications. Now, it's really not overriding your firewall policy because you don't have to change any firewall rules. If you've enabled internet outbound, it's really using that policy or that rule to connect to our service in the cloud using port 80 or port 443. So it's not really overriding it, and it's respecting all the rules that you've created. And for it to function, you still need to enable those rules through your firewall policy. So it's respecting all of that.
Thank you, Ashish. Our next question is from Richard. Are there any plans to enable private access for machine level access, specifically for domain controller access pre-logon for hybrid Azure AD join scenarios?
That's a really great question. I wish I could say yes to it right now, but hopefully we should be able to say yes in a couple of months. This is an area that we are actively exploring, and we plan to solve it soon.
Thank you, Ashish. Now, one quick note that instead of hybrid Azure AD join scenarios, we are now hybrid Microsoft Entra ID join scenarios. Our next question is, are the app segment rules evaluated on the client or the SSE cloud?
It's actually both. The client evaluates the app segments in order to decide whether it should acquire the application to then route it through the service and deliver it to your corporate network. And then these app segments are also used by the service in the cloud to ensure that any traffic that the client sends is actually adhering to the policies and the segments that you've defined in your application, so that only the legitimate traffic matching the policy ends up reaching to your corporate network. So it's both.
Thank you, Ashish. Our next question is from Ravinder. Will private access by any chance going to assist in conditional access app control, where sometimes if we see delay in page loading or features missing?
There are two parts to this question, I would say. We have been working on a capability in Azure AD application proxy, which will come to Entra Private Access as well, which we call as maintenance mode. Now, that maintenance mode enables you to temporarily disable your application while it's under maintenance, so that the you don't have to actually delete your application for you to perform the maintenance. So that's one that will come to the Entra Private Access as well. And the good thing about Microsoft Entra Private Access is that it's built on top of our global network and it's delivered from the edge of our cloud, which means that any traffic coming in with intra internet access or private access is by default accelerated by our edge network, our global presence, our global WAN. So you will see improvement in performance while accessing these private applications.
Thank you, Ashish. Now we have some feedback and question from Elvind. Conditional access isn't always the answer. A problem is that Intune has a cache where the device might be compliant or not for some time that isn't true. Can we do a direct policy that tells private access to only let in users with X and Y that is checked on the actual machine, not Intune compliance? For example, only allow if on connect time the user is running third party EDR service.exe.
That's a that's again a very great question. Thank you for that, Ivan. This is an actual POC that we are working on internally right now. Again, an active area that we are exploring and investigating, and hopefully we should be able to support soon.
I would add to that that question is relevant not just for private access; it's relevant for any access. And the question is like, is the lag in time for Intune compliance check? I think that there is active work to actually shorten that time, and like over time we can also add more checks to our client. But at this point, for this initial release, I think that we are focused primarily on integrating with the compliance checks and the basically the signals for that are coming from Intune. But what we do basically, if you look at that, today you can only apply those signals when you actually go to target applications which are federated with Azure AD. Actually, you can actually enforce that check. What our solution is doing is that it makes that, it brings basically that Intune device check to anywhere. Any target application that you would go to, whether it is federated or not, you will be able to actually require your devices to be compliant. So that is actually a great expansion of that check. Yeah.
Thank you, Yair and Ashish. Our next question is from Michael. Will private access support line of sight access to on-premise AD for self-service password reset at the Windows login screen?
So there was a related question that was asked before around pre-logon scenarios, and the answer to this question is also tied to that. So this is again an area that we are actively looking into. Right now, we don't support that in public preview, but we are currently investigating.
Thank you, Ashish. Now, another question we received is, can I use the same application proxy connector for both web and non-web applications?
Indeed, again, a great question. So the way we are building the Microsoft Entra Private Access, remember in one of the previous questions that I answered, we are building on the goodness of Azure AD application proxy. And we want to be mindful of the fact that you have invested or you may have invested extensively in Azure AD application proxy, which means your existing applications that you've created in our directory, as well as all the connectors that you've deployed, you will be able to use them with both application proxy and Microsoft Entra Private Access.
Thank you, Ashish. We have a question from Troy. Will Microsoft provide default internet access profile sets for cataloging websites? Example, social media, storage, gambling, gaming, etc. If so, will they be continually updated?
Yeah, I can pick up this one. So the answer is definitely yes. Currently, like we announced a private preview of this capability, so not like available like externally to everyone, but we will also public preview that in a couple of months. So today you do need to create your own profile with the web categorization feed that we have, but we will have like out of the box, we call it baseline policy. You will have it like out of the box in a couple of months. Yeah. And it's continuously updated, to your question.
Right. And as Yair is pointing out, web category filtering as well as FQDN filtering, both the capabilities are in private preview. And again, the unique differentiation we have in Entra Internet Access is all of these network security policies are completely contextual. So the sophistication that you get in conditional access for device conditions, location conditions, risk scores, you can leverage all of them to associate your filtering policies with the CA policy context. And that brings all of that sophistication and these users need these type of access and those users need these type of access. In these conditions, all of those what if scenarios are now viable for you as an admin to render.
And maybe one more word to add on that unique integration between conditional access and basically all the filtering policies, we call it filtering profile. What it brings to you is actually a full integration with Entra ID, not just for as a user directory, because that is something that any SSC provider has. We are talking about full integration that anything, for example, identity protection, identity governance, all that directly impact all the access decision. So I think that is the unique part of that.
Thank you, Yair. Now, a question from Twitter. Can I use compliant network in combination with IP location ranges?
Yeah, I can take that. Certainly, you can. We have the unique capability to restore the original user source IP, which is a common pain point. So source IP is used in multiple places. Obviously, enterprises are using it in conditional access location context as a defense in depth strategy to identify countries, specific branch offices, and whatnot. But not only there, it's used in risk detection, abnormal travel scenarios as the canonical example. And obviously the sign-in logs, the activity logs of the user are also a crucial artifact where source IP of your user matters. And your average SSC is going to obfuscate the end user IP and therefore break your risk assessment, your location controls, and so on. With Entra Internet Access, with Entra SSC, we do restore the original user source IP. So while we are offering all these modern constructs like compliant network, which also we will continue to offer at the time, we're doing a whole lot of enhancements to the compliant network check itself. But in conjunction with it, you can continue to use your regular location policies, such as source IP-based identification of location in CA.
Thank you, Anupma. We have a question from Aubrey. Will private access allow for a longer backend application timeout? Currently, the app proxy's most extended setting only allows 3 minutes.
Indeed, again, a great question. Yes, with Entra Private Access, we will allow for longer TCP timeouts. With Azure AD Application Proxy, this has been a large item feedback for us. And we are running a private preview wherein for specific requests from customers, we are enabling their tenants and their applications to have larger timeouts up to 10 minutes. So if you're running into any limitation with Azure AD Application Proxy on that front, please reach out to support and we will be happy to onboard you on that preview program that gives you longer timeouts.
Thank you, Ashish. We have a question from Kshitij. Will there be traffic inspection for private traffic as well in the future?
I can pick up that one. So the way we designed the system, it's not like a set of different products. Like we designed the system from the get-go as one product, whether this is private access or public access or internet access. So it's basically the same exact architecture. we will be start layering the security capabilities first for internet access. This is just like initial prioritization like decision, but you could expect that any relevant basically security capabilities will be automatically snapped later to private access. Ashish, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's great, Yair. I think you covered it well. Thank you.
Our next question is from Brian. Does client DNS resolution work over private internet access? For example, an SMB map drive connection that points to an internal host name or FQDN.
I can start. I can pick that. I'm laughing because like this is being worked on right now, and I just kind of like we came out for a discussion like how we enable that like in the next few months. Working with Ashish on that. So currently no, but like this is really coming soon. Ashish, anything?
Yeah, I think that's great. I was also amused with the same reason because we were just discussing about this since last almost like 2 weeks. We're working and brainstorming how do we enable that. So in addition to what Yair said, the only thing I would add is right now in preview, if you define an FQDN in an application segment today during this preview, you really don't need the DNS resolution to happen. It will still work for you. You don't really even need to add the IP address. If you just add FQDN as the app segment, it would work for you. But what we really want to enable for you is the next step, which is we still want to enable private DNS in certain use cases, and we'll have that support available soon.
Yeah. I can say that support again will be unified over time for both internet access and private access, so that it will be based on a DNS proxy running on our edge network, and the DNS proxy will serve both scenarios, and we'll have additional security scenarios in the future, but we'll be starting with enabling the private access scenarios that you mentioned.
Thank you, Yair and Ashish. Now we have a question on why are we calling this universal conditional access?
I can take that. So the term universal alludes to even if your application doesn't directly support Entra ID integration or can be federated with Entra ID directly, the unique value prop of Entra SSC is that we bring conditional access, but we don't stop at conditional access. We are actively working on instant revocation of tokens and dynamic adaptation to conditions by way of continuous access evaluation integration, so that any endpoint on your private or your internet IP space is ubiquitously protected through the access control sophistication. And again, I'm repeating myself, conditional access and the universality of it, that you don't have to natively federate or integrate your application with Entra ID controls to leverage the value prop. But we don't stop here, and very soon we are lighting up continuous access evaluation, which again we feel is one of the things we do as a first in the industry.
Thank you, Anupma. And thank you, folks. Love the feedback. Please keep them coming. Now, before we close, Anupma, Ashish, and Yair, any last insight, call to action, or final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah. First, it was really exciting for me personally to be here today. I've been working on this project with this awesome team for quite some time, and to see it is like a birth. For us, it's really the initial phase, initial capabilities. The underlying globally distributed proxy architecture is what we worked on, and now we expect the capabilities to rapidly increasing. So stay tuned for additional capabilities in the next quarters. Ashish?
Yeah, I would like to also share similar thoughts. We worked hard on this product, and we're very, very excited to have you try it out, and really interested and looking forward to your feedback.
Likewise, this is the kickoff of hearing from broader customer community for most of us here on the call today, and this is the phase we've all been waiting for. Thank you. for your participation today and the awesome questions you had put out. We really enjoyed the outing today.
Thank you, folks. And please do join us at our next session on AMA Azure AD is being renamed. Thank you very much.